All right. Well, hello and welcome this afternoon or evening or perhaps even morning, depending on where you are joining us from. And today's webinar, we're going to be talking about something near and dear to our hearts at LSVT. This is some of my favorite components of doing therapy. And so we want to talk about purposeful living beyond the diagnosis. Finding empowerment through LSVT Big and LSVT Loud. And I am your presenter today. My name is Heather Hodges. I am a speech language pathologist. I am also LSVT Loud faculty. I have various roles within LSVT Global, including ASHA, CEU administration, Loud for Life instructor, as well as teaching courses, holding webinars, and a variety of other hats that I wear. I have 13 years experience working in a hospital setting, providing various voice, swallowing, and upper airway diagnoses and treatment procedures. Additionally to that, providing LSVT Loud to those with Parkinson's, Parkinsonisms, and other neurological diseases. I have a bio here that goes into more detail about me for your reference. I won't go through all of the details, but it is there for you if you want to refer to it. I will be presenting today on LSVT Big and LSVT Loud. So it's my honor to be representing both therapies and all of my faculty colleagues within LSVT Global. Some logistics, taking care of the business side of things. I do have disclosures to make. My financial relationship includes being a consultant for LSVT Global, and I do receive lecture honorarium. My non-financial relationships include a preference for the LSVT Loud and LSVT Big treatment techniques. Some logistics for today. To help control the background noise that can happen from the various rooms that everyone is joining us from today, the microphones are automatically muted. And so during the question and answer portion at the end of the webinar, we can unmute your microphone if you want to ask your question out loud. You can also ask questions throughout the presentation today by using the control buttons on Zoom. So there are control buttons. A variety of ways you can ask questions are to put them into the chat. There is also a Q&A button at the bottom near the chat button, and you can specifically put your questions into there. I am joined today by our wonderful Jessica in our Tucson office, who will be running the administration of this webinar and all of the important, fabulous behind the scenes work that goes into this. And so between she and I, we will be monitoring the chat box and the Q&A box so that we're sure to answer your questions today. She is also going to put into the chat a copy of the handout of today's lecture. It should already have been sent to you if you pre-registered for this webinar, but if you want to look at it or download it from the chat, it'll be included there too. There is a survey that will come up at the end of today's webinar, and we really appreciate your feedback. So whether you are somebody whose life has been affected by Parkinson's disease, Lewy body dementia, or another diagnosis, or whether you are a professional within the medical or rehabilitation teams, the survey provides you an opportunity to let us know how we did. Also, if you have any follow-up needs or questions, and for those of you who are interested in receiving a certificate of completion for your professional organization, your professional accreditation, you are able to include that information into the survey as well. So speaking of those continuing education elements, this slide deck, this webinar today is available only for self-reported CEUs. So this is not a webinar that is ASHA or state registered for speech, physical, or occupational therapy professionals, but it absolutely can count as your continuing maintenance hours or continuing education units, as long as you have the certificate. And so if you are a speech, physical, or occupational therapy professional and would like to self-report your activity, if you're viewing this live today, you can email us at webinars@lsvtglobal.com to request your certificate of completion. If you are watching this after today's live viewing, and so we have on demand a large library of webinars from the past, and some people will be watching this on demand at a later date. You may also request a certificate as well. And so we have the information there for you where you can email us at webinars@lsvtglobal.com. If you have any difficulty finding the survey that should pop up after your on-demand viewing, we recognize that licensing requirements for CEUs differ by state, so check with your OT, PT, speech licensing boards as to whether they accept non-ASHA registered or non-pre-approved CEU activities. And in order to receive your certificate, you do need to attend for the full hour in order to earn that hour of CEU credit. So learning objectives today. Upon conclusion of this webinars, we want attendees to be able to define what is meant by purpose in life, to be able to summarize the scientific findings that support the role of purpose as something that positively affects brain health and dementia. And we will be providing you with information so you may identify ways that the LSVT Big and LSVT Loud therapies can support engagement in purposeful activities for you or for your patients with Parkinson's disease and Lewy body dementia. And so to get an idea of who is joining us in this public webinar today, we love to get a sense of who is joining us. And so that way we can be sure to speak more to the audience. We always have a variety of folks that are joining us. So I do have a poll that I'm going to launch, and we'd love for you to participate. And so let me launch this poll, essentially asking, who is joining us? Are you somebody with Lewy body dementia or another neurological condition? Perhaps you are a friend or a family member or caregiver. Or you might be an LSVT Loud or LSVT Big certified clinician. Maybe you are a health professional, clinician, or student who's not certified. Or maybe you are somebody else. So I'm going to launch this, and I'll give you a few moments to check the box that's appropriate to you. And once we get folks, we're starting to get some responses coming in. That's great. Looks like we've got a pretty good variety here of people joining us, which is wonderful. All right, I think almost everyone has responded. And so I'll end the poll. And then what's really cool is I can share the results so that you can see that most of the people joining us today are those who've been diagnosed with Lewy body dementia or another neurological condition, followed closely by certified clinicians, LSVT Loud and LSVT Big. And welcome to the family members, welcome to the other health professionals who are not certified, and we are really excited to have you here. So with that, I'm going to stop the poll, get back out of there, and we'll go back to our presentation. So first we'll talk about the impact of Parkinson's disease and Lewy body dementia on purposeful activity. These diagnoses carry motor and cognitive challenges. The motor challenges include slower movement or bradykinesia, rigidity, postural instability, and speech impairment. They also can carry with it cognitive fluctuations, those ups and downs, hallucinations, and also apathy. And so between the motor and the cognitive challenges that exist, we know and recognize, and it's well established within the research, that there is a loss of engagement in daily life that comes with these diagnoses. This can look like a reduced participation in hobbies, social interactions where people become more withdrawn, as well as self-care, those activities of daily living, such as dressing and bathing, etc. And so we, for this talk, have to talk about what is meant by purpose. And so purpose in life is central to the psychological well-being in adulthood. And this is well established by researcher Rife in 1989, 2014. And there's a really great model that exists as a result of this work and this model. So having purpose can look like many different things. And so it can involve having goals and intentions for the future that contribute to a sense that life is meaningful. It also includes having a clear and meaningful direction in life based upon each person's unique values, goals, and passions. We also, in order for the purpose to exist, we have to act intentionally and deliberately to pursue what matters to you and to contribute to the world in a positive way. It means to live with purpose when we unlock our story, our gifts, our curiosity. And so we see where having interactions and having therapies that are goal-driven based on what the person's story, gifts, curiosity, and goals are. And due to the expanding evidence behind purpose and cognition, this is often called a psychological resource for aging well. So that's pretty cool to think of, that purpose can be a resource that we have. And so this is scientifically backed. The science says that a strong sense of purpose and meaning in life is linked to lower risk of cognitive decline, and it may help to enhance cognitive reserve. So thinking of it as a resource, we have some reserves, we might have a stockpile even, so to speak. For instance, Sutton et al. In 2020, they looked at a sample of over 22,000 people, and they explored how meaning in life and cognitive impairment were related. And they found from this study that lower meaning in life was associated with a greater risk of cognitive impairment. And so considering the association between depression and dementia, inflammation and dementia, it is possible that purpose and meaning in life may play a protective role through their association with important dementia-related biomarkers. And those biomarkers include neuroinflammation and cellular stress response. So we know that there is science and research that is behind the drive and the model for improving purpose within life to help address and protect our cognitive reserve. There's also a growing body of literature that's pointed to the value of purpose and cognitive resilience in later life. So overarching this is the notion of cognitive reserve theory. And cognitive reserve is the idea that healthy habits and activities that you do throughout your life, like staying mentally active or staying social, can help your brain work well, even if it gets damaged by diseases like Parkinson's and Lewy body dementia. There's also psychological resilience research. And these are studies that looked at the ways people help, engagement, and that if you have these reserves, these studies found that people bounce back or get better quickly when something hurts their health or their happiness. Having a purpose in life brings forth better resilience when illness occurs. And that purpose in life and thinking skills are related. When we have a sense of purpose or a meaning in life, it actually helps older adults think better. People who feel their life has meaning, they tend to perform better on brain tests and can better resist the damage of brain diseases, such as Lewy body dementia. And in Australia, there has been research that found older Australians who felt purposeful do better than other people their age on tests of memory and how quickly they can think. And they also keep their mental sharpness longer as they age. So all of this research in a nice nutshell is to say, purposeful older adults tend to report better subjective health. They are at a lower risk for stroke and dementia, and they live longer relative to their counterparts with a lower sense of purpose. So Will Roth said that very nicely and succinctly. Now, how in the world can we cultivate a sense of purpose? What can you do? What can we do? And so first is to practice. It's like a muscle. Practice having a sense of control. Engage in activities. Don't withdraw, instead engage. Align your activities with your past goals and interests for kind of the biggest effect or biggest bang for the buck. Contribute to the community. This can really help cultivate a sense of purpose, whether it's community in your neighborhood, whether it's community within your diagnosis, support group, whether it's volunteering at a place of interest or perhaps an old workplace. Adapt to the physical health limitations. And so this is where your occupational therapy, speech and physical therapists, social workers can come in to support and help adapt the environment so that we are able to provide the engagement or volunteer opportunities or community involvement for those individuals who might have a health limitation that comes along with Parkinson's disease or Lewy body dementia. And especially since I'm a speech language pathologist, but for every health professional, we should be engaging you to engage socially, encourage you to engage socially. So even that social engagement, staying social, has science-backed research behind it for improving cognition and quality of life. And it's been found that utilizing a consistent schedule or a routine really helps in cultivating a sense of purpose. So what are meaningful activities? And it doesn't have to be work. It doesn't have to be employment, and it doesn't have to be something that is a long commitment or a big project. What we look for and what is supported is that the activity be enjoyable. and that it also be suited to individual skills and abilities or preferences. So do something that's interesting to you or works on skills that you have. That it is related to your personal goals, because I think when anything in life, we need a reason to participate in something that really helps make it meaningful. Should be engaging more so than just being physically present, but it should be something that engages you actively. It's not just, sitting in a space and listening, or sitting in a space and not contributing. It should be something that is engaging, even if it's a quiet activity. As long as it's engaging, it's hands-on, or it engages some thinking, that's important. It expresses and reinforces your identity. And so, for instance, my father, when he retired, he needed a sense of purpose. And so he was able to find a position, just a couple hours a week, where he was able to put together things. And this helped reinforce his identity that he's somebody who is good at carpentry or mechanics. And so that really helped him to have a much more salient sense of self and identity, versus if he had done something that he couldn't relate to or wasn't part of his identity, such as he doesn't cook. So if he had, gone for a volunteer job cooking, or helping his local church with putting on a banquet, that wasn't something that was really tied to his identity. Somebody else might be the exact reverse opposite. So reinforcing identity is important for meaningfulness. Take into consideration the factors to engagement and the sense of identity, and that you have within that role or that placement or that setting, that there is adequate cognitive and physical ability to get that done. And that's where the availability of activities and resources to you can be helpful. That's where your occupational therapist, physical therapist, speech therapist may help you so that you have the skills necessary for that meaningful activity. And then with engagement comes well-being. So how in the world do we know what well-being is? How is it measured? And so it's really measured by what I do as an individual, what you do as an individual, that there's a level of independence, satisfaction of being a contributor, that idea of feeling that you were useful to others, or being able to contribute and be part of a service. Participants recognized that Parkinson's disease limited what they could do, but found value in accepting limitations and were proud of achieving what they could. And so that's where physical, mental, and environmental health come into play. It is suggested that reduced engagement in meaningful occupation, and I don't just mean by job when I say occupation, but activity, reduced engagement in meaningful activity impacts a person's identity and self of well-being, and it sometimes is more than the disease itself. And so those different meanings of occupation might be a relationship. I am a great father. I was able to help my daughter by engaging at her meeting and greeting people, or I was able to put together something mechanical like my dad for my daughter's work. I am a great father. That's part of his identity, part of the relationship component of it. Maybe it's a relationship within your community. I'm a great community member, or I'm an important part of this support group or church, etc. And so meaningful engagement's necessary for facilitating and maintaining relationships. And the more we're able to maintain our relationships, the more engaged we stay, the more socially involved we are, and the healthier we are both mentally, physically, and in our satisfaction and quality of life. And so that sense of identity where a patient might say, I feel as if I am human. So that's an important thing. We might take that for granted, but that feeling is very important for our well-being. And that there is an association between engaging in occupation, so being occupied, having an activity, and well-being. And you can even think of it as activity engagement is necessary for well-being. In the blue box, it's a nice pop out to help reinforce the fact that researchers found that major illness did not have such a negative impact on well-being if people could maintain engagement in activities and had social support. So what happens when there is cognitive decline? Well, when encountering this as an individual or as somebody who is a caregiver or a rehab therapist, make sure that person-centered goal setting is occurring. So if you go to an appointment with an OT, a PT, a speech therapist, or you're with your loved one when they go to their appointment, and you're coming up with, what do we want to get out of this therapy? What do we want to get out of this experience? Ensure that the goals are truly patient-centered. And so the therapist will guide participants with subjective cognitive impairment to set some goals, rank them in the order of importance, from extremely important to not important. And we find that goals will tend to fall within different domains, and it's going to vary person to person. And it's going to not be something that the family member wants to drive. They can have input, but it really needs to be something that the patient feels ownership over, and that is the most meaningful, important for them. So there are diverse domains of goals. Perhaps those goals have to do with symptom and cognition management. Maybe the goal focus is time management or use of technology, leisure participation, so the hobbies, the activities, the interests. Home management can be a big area of goals that people will have. Maintaining friendships, so going to that coffee club or attending the poker game, things like that. And it might also be that the person wants to help care for others or provide of themselves through volunteering. This is also a nice outline too, if as a therapist it helps you come up with goals for your patient. Perhaps this is something to present to them if they're having a hard time with coming up with their biggest goals. I do find that when I ask what's the most meaningful area of speech or of movement or of safety to you that you want to work on, what do you miss doing, that those are great ways to identify the goals as well. And so we really want purposeful living beyond the diagnosis. So there should be an empowerment through therapy that happens. That through therapy, our patients can reconnect with identity, autonomy, and that we can help them to build routines around meaningful engagement. Within the community and the care partners, there is tremendous impact. And so this is where therapies can help to support the caregiver, help the communication to improve so that we reduce isolation, or within that home, we reduce frustration from communication breakdowns that may be occurring. So these are two ways that therapists and the community and care partners can come together, work as a team. And so I want to talk to you about LSVT big and LSVT loud therapies as part of that dynamic that I just mentioned. With these, I'll be talking about each therapy in different respects. And so first I'll talk about how do the LSVT big, so the body movement exercises help. Well, for those of you not familiar with it or who are newly familiar with it, LSVT big focuses on the amplitude of gross motor and fine motor movement. It also helps with stopping and starting movement, direction changes, building up endurance over time, improving balance, which helps to reduce fall risk, their strength, the range of motion within the body, and posture. So the protocol here really forces normal use and retrains normal use. And it does this through intensive practice, repetition, complexity, and with the motivation and feedback coming from the clinician. So you can think of all the ways this could translate to somebody's function. Sustained posture, for example, is needed when sitting for work or for meals. It's also needed for standing. Initiation of stepping with walking forward might be important for things like walking into a shower or into an elevator over a curb, for example. And what LSVT big does is it generalizes bigger movement to functional activities in daily life. So here you see one of the exercises by our therapist, Jenny, on the left. She's doing a rock and reach movement, and that's great to be able to do in therapy. But the treatment goal of that exercise is an improved ability to do things like reach things from high shelves. Similarly, we'll go through how do the LSVT loud daily exercises help? Well, the daily exercises are going to increase the amplitude of volume needed for speaking. The ease of initiation of voice so that it's always healthy, good quality, and that it becomes a voice with increased endurance, improved breath support, improved clarity. So if it's articulation or mumbling or slurring that you're noticing, we focus in on that through loudness. We also see that increased facial expressivity will happen. So that masked face that's associated with Parkinson's, with the Parkinsonisms, it actually is improved. And that's a more engaging face to others, to your listeners to interact with. Improved intonation so that you don't have a monotone voice when you're talking, because that is associated with Parkinson's, and communicative confidence. And so an example here is one of the daily exercises is a nice, strong, loud ah, and that's a really great exercise. It coordinates a whole lot through the motor speech system. But that ah is just a tool. It's a tool that will facilitate improved loudness for conversation, whether it's on the phone, in person. So these exercises taken by themselves improve movement, function, range of motion, but the goal of exercise is to put things into your everyday life. So in LSVT Big, this is a snapshot of what a treatment session will look like. You see multiple daily exercises, all of which have many repetitions that are performed. There's functional tasks, there's hierarchy and walking, homework, and carryover activities. And so on the left, you can think of those exercises as core amplitude rescaling. We know that patients' movement gets smaller and they have this paradox where to the patient, smaller movement feels normal and normal movement feels too big. And so we're rescaling that amplitude and we're translating that amplitude into life. We're putting it into someone's functional, meaningful, individualized goals with the second half, that right side of the slide, and those components. We want them to be meaningful and applicable to the patient's personal life. Similarly with LSVT Loud. So the daily exercises on the left, we're going to be working out your sustained phonation. We're going to be working your amplitude and volume, working your intonation with that second daily exercise of your pitch range, and maximal functional speech loudness. So there's your core amplitude exercises that rescale you. And then through the hierarchy and structuring reading and conversation into longer and longer duration. Sorry, I have a kitten who just joined me. Sorry about that. She loves to sit and play. And then homework. So with LSVT Loud or LSVT Big, there are homework and carryover tasks so that you're not just doing these exercises in this carryover in the 1 hour treatment session, that you're really applying it to your everyday. And so these will allow you to translate the amplitude into functional, salient, individual communication goals you may have. And let's link that. Let's link these exercises to function, whether it's body function or voice function. So I like to refer to this as the how and the why. So initiation of stepping with your gait. We want you to be able to step over things, like I mentioned, the shower, but also the curb or onto a train if you're using public transportation to get around. Stepping sideways to maneuver in the kitchen or small spaces like a bathroom or aisles in a movie, so that if movies or doing daily chores are something that you want to help you feel engaged or purposeful, you can do that safely, you can do that well, and with optimum ideal amplitude. Stepping back before sitting, backing up to move out of the way. So going backwards can be a real challenge. We want to address that because backing up is something that we do every day. We don't even think about all the times we do it, even opening a door and backing up when we swing it out. So that's an example of putting exercises into function. With loudness, you want to be heard and understood at the doctor's office, for example, or ordering food at a restaurant and being heard and getting the food that you want and not what the waitress or waiter thought you may have said. Picking up a prescription at the pharmacy or talking on the phone or FaceTime. Those are big areas that a lot of people have a hard time with. And so why we do this, and looking specifically first to LSVT Big, these functional component tasks and the functional hierarchy. So the second half of the session, we take in these exercises and the hierarchy with the purpose of you overlearning commonly used and salient phrases, everyday simple functional movements to help you carry this over. Carry it over and do it outside of the therapy room. When we add it all up, you're doing a lot of repetitions of exercise. You're doing 300 repetitions each month. And that's going to help you bring this rescaled amplitude, this movement that's now normal, into your everyday living. These become constant reminders to use louder voice, bigger movements outside of therapy, and it encourages compliance and carryover. And that they're kind of like calibration hooks. So every time you practice these in treatment and you've done it 100 times or 300 times, you've done it so much that when you go to do that same activity out and about in the park or your house, you go to do it, and because of muscle memory and procedural memory, you do it just like you did in therapy, and it becomes this hook for better loudness or better movement. And so here's a nice example of an individual who has Parkinson disease. She was a manager at a CVS drugstore, and she had to pull a large chain on a pulley every day so that she could lift and lower a garage door. And she also had to count money. And so you'll see where the therapist got clever with these simulations and really great modeling of the tasks and thinking big to get them done and drive to do them. When counting back cash, you'll hear how the therapist has her practice what she says during those interactions as well, so that she can multitask, talk while she's counting, while she's moving. So here's the first video where we see the simulation of using a pulley to open that garage door.
Left hand and pull. Big left hand and pull. Go for it. Ready? Yep. Go. Big left. Left hand. Left hand. Yes! Left hand. Good. And stop. Good.
All right, you can see how that really would mimic her movement in like opening a garage door. And here she is now, functional, working on her purpose, working on something that's meaningful to her, and setting her up with the abilities to be successful and to feel that innate feeling we have of a job well done or a job done to our own personal standard.
With your left hand, okay? Pull, 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 pull. Now with these cards, every time you pull, I want you to say out loud that word.
Okay, what it is on the card.
What it is on the card.
All right.
Ready?
Yep.
And go.
Etching.
Big.
Alternative. Memories.
Keep it going.
Memories.
Big.
Alternative.
Pull.
Memories.
Pull.
Alternative.
Louder.
Memories.
Bigger.
Memories.
Go for it.
Alternative.
Pull it.
Valuables.
Pull
Etchings.
Great. I love that clinician. She's driving them, she's encouraging them. And you'll see how while they're being cued for louder and bigger, what's elicited from the patient actually looks very normal. And so that's that paradox that happens within these diagnoses where it feels too big or it feels too loud, but it's actually nice and normal.
Hand and pull with your left.
So linking the exercises to function and thinking about nice ways to observe and to evaluate if you're meeting these markers. So consist of 1 to 3 specific goals and obtain those through discussion, observation, functional task recording with your clinician. So that way you're working on what you want to work on. These are going to be complex and multi-step functional activities, and they are a part of every session. Multiple repetitions over and over across time are going to increase so that it's never boring, it's never rote. We're always activating your brain for that optimal neuroplasticity. And so examples other than the videos that you watched might be if someone does like to cook and that's something meaningful to them. I'm able to cook dinner every night for my family and feed them nutritional things and feed them delicious things, and this brings meaning to me. So the first component of preparing a meal is retrieve the ingredients. And then you want to gather the tools and prep the food if it needs it. Stirring the pot or placing in the oven, and finally serving the food. On the other side of things is linking exercise to function in LSVT loud. So functional loud phrases. These 10 functional phrases are something a person truly says every day in their lives. We don't come up with the 10 phrases. We don't know what you say in a given day. So you come up with these with our assistants or the assistants of people at home. And these become overlearned, personalized phrases that are used daily. And they never change because they're truly daily things you say, practiced over multiple repetitions. And they really end up helping you to monitor your ability for loudness. So it's almost like a self-monitor check. These are going to bring in the amplitude and recalibration of using loud voice, which is not really loud. It's actually normal, but to you in your ear, it feels loud. And these will act as a reminder of that loud voice being used at home. So similarly, this becomes a hook. You practice it so much in therapy that when you do it at home, say it in practice outside the carryover or outside the treatment room, that it is a hook. And so here is an individual speaking Amharic, and you'll hear that she's going to go through these phrases. These are her 10 functional phrases, and you can see them translated in English and then in parentheses in her native language, because these are tailored to her.
We're going to do them in Amharic now, too.
Okay.
All right, so look at the piece of paper if you need them, but we're going to start with Ishi Chiruno.
Ishi Chiruno.
Nice. That was loud. That was sounding really good. When you're loud, it sounds so clear. Everybody's going to be able to hear you and know what you're saying.
Okay.
Try it again. Next one, we're going to say Buna Tatalo.
Buna Tatalo.
Nice. That was nice and clear. You have beautiful Amharic. Next one, you're going to do Wuatatalo.
Wuatatalo.
Yes, nice loud voice. All right, this one's my favorite one. You ready? Anunkasakasalo.
Anunkasakasalo.
Yes. Nice job. And need.
Enid.
Good. All right, here we go. Up next is Course Anubla.
Course Anubla.
Very nice.
So just a little snapshot into that function. And why we do this is to not just act as a hook, but these also become something that we can progress in difficulty by adding in extra dual tasks, extra challenges. Because these functional phrases don't change and the patient will get better and better and better at them, we don't want these to get boring, and we want them to fit into truly their daily lives. And so if it's practicing the phrases while doing a movement, if they are standing to sitting or sitting to stand, or if they are folding laundry at the same time, we multitask. So we live in a dual tasking world. This is a very real world application. It also drives neuroplasticity. And we tell all of the clinicians and our patients to make sure that if you are practicing these with a dual task, that the task you're doing is meaningful. So it might fit your interests. Like if you like to play poker, maybe you're shuffling while you're doing these phrases or dealing them. Perhaps you are solving math problems if you have an engineering brain, or we had one patient in a research study who was a math professor. And so we want those dual tasks to be real and meaningful. These are going to now think about, we're going to change gears and think about the speech hierarchy. This is where the second half of the session will target your interests, things that you like to read about, learn about, hobbies that you have that we can talk about. And over the 4 weeks of therapy, we will systematically progress the length, the complexity, the time spent reading or talking about these interests so that we reach your desired functional speech level. And the length and complexity increases each week. We build up ability so that we reduce frustration using different reading materials. They change every day so that they're always fresh and new and interesting and on topics and formats that are inspired by you. We bring all that great voice rescaling and the daily exercises straight into prolonged speech and talking and reading into the second half of each treatment session. And this really helps us to work towards your specific communication goals. So here's a video of an individual who loved jokes. And so he happened to like light bulb jokes. You know, how many blank does it take to screw in a light bulb? So this was patient driven by him, and you'll see and hear him being engaged.
I'm going to make you do this one because I want you to stay loud for all of it. If you start to get soft and fast, I'm going to stop you. So say again, 1 to screw it in.
1 to screw it in, and 1 to observe how the light bulb itself symbolizes a single incandescent beacon of subjective reality in another world of endless...
And we're stopping and think loud in
another world of endless absurdity reaching out towards the more than cosmos of nothingness.
All right, let's listen to that.
And they do they do played feedback so that the patient can hear themselves. You can see how the clinician focused on loudness and keeping it loud to get them through that very long part of the answer to how many existentialists does it take to screw in a light bulb. And so that was a great example of how he'd reached a level of more complex speech and language that was interesting to him. Not all speech and language gets that complex, and it will depend on the patient's progress, but even more so on their goals and their interests. And so these materials change every day. As I mentioned, they progress in difficulty, and we can add in we can add in those cognitive, limbic, motor challenges. And so they really they're a lot of fun. It's very fun when we're able to make it engaging and make it something that the patient's excited about. And then it's fun because oftentimes they'll go and share this with their family members, or maybe they want to practice reading a book so they can read that book to their grandchild, for example. And that provides a really great sense of purpose and meaningfulness behind the activities, and gives the patient, when we can open up their movement or their communication, that real sense of purpose again. So regardless of big or loud, we have carryover exercises. This is where your therapist will say, what are you doing the rest of your day? And let's come up with some assignments that you can use while you meet your friends or while you go to the store. And so the daily assignments that the patient will mandate to use bigger movements in real life situations outside of therapy. And these are really to help convince you and show you that bigger movements are actually normal movements. They're not big and huge and exaggerated. No one's going to look at you and wonder what you're doing. They actually feel big on the inside, but they're normal looking movements. And an example that your therapist might say would be, so tonight when you eat your dinner with your family, I want you to use your big movements when cutting your food. Cut big enough that your family notices. And tomorrow tell me what your family thought of your big cutting. Similarly with loud, you're going to come up with conversation or communication exercises outside the therapy room, so you carry that over. An example would be, today when you call your daughter, I want you to greet her with your loud voice. Speak loud enough that your daughter and wife notice. Tomorrow, you can tell me how they reacted and what they said about your loud voice. And we're going to be linking these exercises to function. And so this is because we know there's a mismatch between how the patient perceives their vocal or their movement output versus how others perceive it in those who have Parkinson's disease or Lewy body dementia. And so we'll hear from patients. They'll say, my voice is not too soft, or I'm not too slow. I'm not moving small. My gait, my steps are not small and slow. And then when we get them at an appropriate loudness, or we get them at an appropriate movement, a good gait, they will say, I can't talk like this. I feel like I'm shouting. Or I can't move like this. I am moving too big. We also, in the second half of the sessions, so in the last 30 minutes of treatment, we have patient-specific functional practice that we always work on. And so this is where we can really get to the personalized, purposeful practice. I'll say again, these are going to be based on the needs and the goals of the client, and they might be fine motor tasks, gross motor tasks, maybe both. There might be handwriting, using a cell phone, fasteners on clothing, etc. Practicing rewarding tasks, and we want patients to feel that success, but we also want it to be meaningful. So we say emotionally salient, and that is what activates the basal ganglia circuitry within the brain. And so you're getting that neuroplasticity workout when we are able to be meaningful, salient, and that makes people more motivated. So we're going to link those activities to the patient's goals and allow you to practice the things that you enjoy doing. So hobbies, passions, and talk about getting that purpose, that meaningfulness to these exercises truly engaged and happening, because that's going to help to achieve self-realization and improve participation in life. So we can utilize task-oriented, client-centered treatment. And this helps address depression and apathy. When we're successful in movement, activity, increasing exercise, we're successfully communicating, that absolutely goes a long way for giving patients more engagement and happiness. So target, it matters. So that's why these programs are called LSVT Loud and LSVT Big. We know that with LBD or PD, the voice is too small. And so you see on the left, this soft voice coming out, the body's not very engaged. When we say, think loud, instantly, the person on the right shows up. And without even realizing it, a deeper breath is taken, the vocal cords move better, the oral tract, those articulators are moving bigger, the face is more engaged just by thinking loud. Similarly with body movement. So small movement, perhaps aided movement, is what we see on the left with this unscaled individual. And then just with the cue of big. So think big. We actually get healthy amplitude. You see the person on the right has better posture. They're not aided. They're taking steps that are not small. They have arms swing again. And you see that happy, engaged face as well. There's a lot of repetition to these programs. So the daily maximal exercises that we've talked about for LSVT Big and LSVT Loud, and the hierarchy, so those individualized readings or movement tasks that gets more complex over the 4 weeks, homework and carryover tasks that are patient-driven. And these are going to be different. They're going to vary day to day, be progressive, and they're going to be high effort. We want to target that real life impact so that we design tasks that are going to affect your life. So thinking and talking while moving in the kitchen or while gardening, doing your dressing, your activities of daily living, while shopping, you're going to have that improved life participation, thinking and talking big and loud. And calibrate. Over the course of treatment, we will help you to learn and recognize and then to accept the relationship between increased movement, that effort that it takes, in order to achieve normal motor output when you're speaking and when you're moving. It is a lifelong model of care. And so after treatment, it's 16 sessions. It's for 4 days a week for 4 weeks. After treatment, you're going to keep practicing. If we stop exercising, everything backslides, whether that's body or whether that's speech and voice. So you keep exercising 15, maybe 20 minutes a day after you've graduated from the initial treatment. Some patients find that doing group practice after graduating helps, and that's where Loud for Life or Big for Life classes can come into play with a local speech therapist, physical, occupational therapist, or LSVT Global also provides these classes to individuals. And tuning up. So check in with your therapist every 3 to 12 months, depending on how often you need it, so that you can do short dosages to get back into gear. So the key takeaways that I want to leave you with. Purpose refers to having a sense of direction in life towards goal-directed activities. Purpose is going to promote resilience in the face of challenges to your well-being, whether that's illness or disease or other barriers in life. And these might be modifiable with short interventions. There's research out there that suggests having a sense of purpose can reduce the risk of cognitive impairment, mild cognitive impairment, and dementia. There's also research showing it can contribute to cognitive reserve, so how much you have in your stores within you to help with resilience and to improve your cognitive performance and promote resilience to dementia-related neuropathology. A number of studies have been referenced in here, so if you're interested in those references, we have them listed here. And then we will invite you to ask questions. Before we get to the questions, I do want to just tell you about the survey. So after this course closes or you exit, the survey will display on your screen right after the webinar. If you don't have time to fill it out right now, it will also be emailed to you tomorrow, the next day after the webinar. For on-demand participants, the survey link is located before the webinar description in the on-demand webinar section of our website and also our YouTube page. You can email us if you have any trouble finding that link. And you will have to notify us if you want to receive the certificate. So the survey should just take like 5 minutes to launch and to complete. And LSVT Loud, or LSVT Global, I should say, has launched a podcast. So Think Big and Loud is what it's called. And it's all about sharing inspiring stories, expert insights, engaging conversation, so that it's designed to empower and uplift. We cover a range of topics from the latest in therapy techniques to personal journeys of triumph and resilience. So you can find it anywhere that you might listen to podcasts. It is available also on YouTube. So I want to thank you so much on behalf of myself and Jessica Galgano, Julia Wood, who helped contribute to this presentation today, and to Jessica in our Tucson office. So if you need anything from us, ways to reach us include email as well as on our website. And then I'm going to go back to that how to ask questions little slide here. So typing it into the Q&A box, you can raise your hand. There's a little raise hand button. And then if you think of a question after, or if you have to head out because you have spent the full hour and a few minutes extra with us, you can email us too. So if you are needing to go and you're looking at this for CEU activity, you've more than completed the hour engagement, so you can rest assured you can log off if needed and still receive your credit for this. So I'm going to stop my screen share so that I can open up and take a look at the chat. All right, I don't see any questions there. And in the Q&A box, I don't see any questions there either. So hopefully this was helpful and all your questions were answered. If you do need anything from any perspective, whether it's clinician, caregiver, patient, other health professional, please keep in touch and let us know. So on behalf of myself and Willa the kitten, who made an unexpected appearance, thanks for joining me today, everyone, and have a great rest of your day. Bye.